"This old man is going to take a while," was the piercing cry that echoed in the bakery line that ordinary morning, a moment that could have gone unnoticed, like so many others in everyday life. But in that scene of everyday drama, one of those stories that truly resonates, the kind that makes us reevaluate, was about to unfold. It was more than just a delay. It was an elderly man humiliated before a silent, hurried audience. We live in times where empathy and humanity are scarce. Who hasn't witnessed a gesture of impatience, a rambling sentence, or even silent prejudice disguised as haste? But what if I told you that this gentleman, with his beautiful handwriting and trembling hands, was writing something much greater than words? He was writing from the heart. Today's story is a true poem of real life, a moving tale of true love, humility that conquers, and transformation through love. Maybe you've judged someone by their pace or their appearance. But what happens when silence teaches and a moving gesture becomes a life lesson? That's what we're going to talk about. Get ready. What begins as a small scene in a bakery ends as an unforgettable legacy, where prejudice in the queue gives way to belated recognition and the wisdom of old age. Mr. Dimas didn't want attention, but he ended up showing us that writing from the heart can touch even the most arrogant customer. The bakery's doorbell rang softly every time someone entered. It was morning, and the line was forming as usual. Hurried mothers, workers staring at their watches, and an elderly gentleman standing at the counter, writing calmly. As everyone waited for their warm bread, the mood was mildly impatient. But as soon as the old man pulled out his notebook, everyone's gazes began to grow heavy. With each passing second, sighs mingled with the smell of fresh coffee. A man in a suit and leather briefcase took 2 steps forward, restless. He drummed his fingers on the counter, huffing and puffing. The elderly man was still writing, slowly, with steady but slow hands. This was too much for someone who lives by the yesterday rhythm. And that's when the comment came like a slap in the face. "This old man is going to take a while." The sentence cut through the air. Some pretended not to hear, others lowered their eyes, but everyone felt the discomfort. It was the kind of prejudice in line that isn't shouted but breathed, that judgment disguised as haste. Mr. Dimas, the moving man, didn't respond. He continued writing with the same care. And there, without realizing it, he began a moving narrative made not of shouts, but of silence that teaches. Mr. Dimas dressed simply. A light cotton shirt, worn at the sleeves, old linen pants, and a pair of worn but clean shoes. His straw hat hid some of his grey hair, and his small eyes held a serenity that clashed with the hustle and bustle around him. He carried a blue-covered notebook and a thick ink pen, the kind that conveys emotion in every stroke. As the commotion grew, he didn't even blink. Leaning against the counter, he wrote as if praying. Letter by letter, curve by curve, his beautiful handwriting seemed to dance on the paper. It was rare to see someone write like that, with time, with their whole body, with their soul. There was no anger on his face, not even any rush. There was only a moving and intimate gesture, recording, day after day, what their hearts still held. Few understood what he did there every day, always at the same time. Some thought it was old man's madness, others just stubbornness. But the truth is that there lived a story of overcoming adversity, hidden in the discreet routine of a man invisible to the crowd. An example of the wisdom of old age, which doesn't impose itself, it simply observes, lives, and writes. And he kept writing. Unbeknownst to him, he was about to be read by the world. Do you think you're at home writing a diary? There are other people in line, you see, the customer said, his voice irritated and his posture inflated. The comment came loud, direct, and cutting. It was the epitome of an arrogant customer, one who mistakes haste for superiority. The sentence seemed to bounce off the bakery walls and return even stronger. Silence fell for seconds, seconds long enough to make everyone uncomfortable. The clerk, young and visibly embarrassed, tried to lighten the mood. With a forced smile, He muttered something like, "We're already serving you, sir." But it was too late. The damage was done. Eyes turned back to the humiliated elderly man, but no one had the courage to react. Not a word of defense, not a gesture of empathy. It was the prejudice in the line taking shape, fueled by the silence of those who see but don't take a stand. And yet, Mr. Demas remained silent. Not a disapproving look, not a sharp retort, just the serene movement of the pen, gliding steadily over the paper. It was humility and respect overcoming pride, a silent yet deafening response, the silence that teaches. In that moment, the moving man began unknowingly to plant one of the greatest life lessons that place has ever seen. As the hubbub died down, the young clerk, still uncomfortable with the situation, looked at the notebook with contained curiosity. So Demas continued writing, as if the world outside hadn't shaken. That moved her. She approached slowly, respecting the space of that moving man. She didn't want to intrude. She wanted to understand. There was something about the scene that was out of the ordinary, that drew attention to its silence. She leaned in discreetly, and that was when she noticed the traces of beautiful handwriting, carefully drawn letters, well-placed commas, margins respected as if in a ritual. It was writing from the heart. No hurried scribbles or thrown-together phrases. There was intention, real-life poetry. With a gentle smile, she asked, "Do you always write like this?" He hesitated, surprised by her interest, but soon nodded with a sweet look. "It's a letter," he murmured. She was enchanted. "May I ask for whom?" she asked gently. And then, as if opening a closely guarded secret, he replied, "For my wife, who is now gone." The employee fell silent, overcome with emotion. It wasn't just writing. It was a moving letter. And what was about to be revealed would completely change the atmosphere of the bakery. The girl, with a mixture of caution and curiosity, asked to read a small part of the letter. Demas thought for a few seconds, as if leafing through his own soul, and then gently handed her the notebook. She opened it and began to read quietly. The words she found there were unusual. They were verses of true love, written with simplicity and beauty. They seemed to come from a poetry book, but they were pure life. "Today, my love, I saw a little bird in the window, and I remembered you smiling." That was how the day's letter began. A heartfelt letter that spoke of longing, small, eternal memories, and a love that not even death could silence. The employee had to contain her emotion. It was as if that paper carried a piece of someone, a piece of a story of overcoming, of fighting oblivion. Unintentionally, she let out a soft sigh. A few nearby customers approached discreetly, drawn by the changing atmosphere. It was as if time had stopped. There was no more rush, no more bread, no more cues, just words. And for the first time, everyone there looked at Demas not as the old man who is late, but as the touching man who wrote letters to his deceased wife every day for 3 years. With a heavy heart and a choked voice, the young clerk asked permission to read a passage aloud. Mr. Demas nodded with a small smile. The bakery, previously filled with impatient murmurs and knocking, fell into a respectful silence. Even those who had already been served stopped at the first sentence. It was more than a moving letter. It was a declaration of eternal love that spanned time. "I know you're not here anymore, but I keep writing to you. Because as long as there is ink in the pen, you live in me." Those words struck a chord. The air grew thick, as if everyone there had been struck by a forgotten memory or a lost love. The emotion in the bakery was palpable. People exchanged glances. Some swallowed hard. For the first time in a long time, everyone was truly present. It was the magic of empathy and humanity blossoming in an unexpected place. That letter wasn't just from Demas to his wife. It was from everyone who's ever lost, who's ever loved, who's ever held their memories. It was a moving gesture capable of dissolving judgments and melting arrogance. What had once been an old man writing revealed itself to be a poem of real life. And there, in the warmth of bread and emotion, the line became an audience for a life lesson. He stood there, motionless, as if the ground had dropped out from under his feet. The arrogant client, once haughty, was now silent. His arms, once crossed impatiently, now clutched his hands in confusion. His eyes, which had been judging only moments before, now sought refuge in the floor. The letter to his deceased wife had pierced his armor. It was the beginning of a belated recognition, the kind that weighs more than 1,000 apologies. He tried to say something, a whisper perhaps, but the words escaped him. The dry throat, the shame in the eyes. Everyone noticed. There were no boos, no accusations, just that silence that teaches. And ironically, it was there that he learned, not by shouting, but with the humility and respect of a moving gentleman who never raised his voice. It was an unexpected turn of events. That man who had mocked was now a picture of guilt. There was no greater punishment than realizing you'd attacked someone who only shared true love. Mr. Dimas had done nothing more than write from the heart, and that was enough to dismantle an inflamed ego. Sometimes life doesn't need to scream to transform. All it takes is a letter, a moving gesture, and the courage to keep quiet and listen. With her hands still trembling with emotion, the clerk took the bread ordered by Mr. Dimas and placed it in a small paper bag. But she didn't stop there. From beside the counter, she grabbed a clean napkin, wrapped a small flower from the vase in the display case around it, and placed it next to the package. It was a simple gesture, almost imperceptible, but loaded with meaning. There was not only bread there was gratitude, recognition, and affection. When he handed her the package, her eyes met his. No words were spoken, and none were needed. Mr. Dimas received the gift with the same delicacy with which he writes his letters. His eyes welled up, but his smile never wavered. It was a smile that said thank you, that embraced without touching. A silent exchange, filled with what the world needs: humanity. The excitement in the bakery reached its peak. Some customers applauded discreetly. Others just took a deep breath, touched. It was impossible to leave the place the same. That flower wrapped in bread was a symbol of transformation through love, of the empathy that arises when someone decides to see beyond the rush. And Mr. Dimas left as always. But that day, everyone knew that a piece of him would remain there. Still emotional, the clerk took a discreet photo of the notebook, just an excerpt, a simple sentence from that day's letter. He posted on social media in just a few words: "Today, I learned more from a gentleman in silence than in years of rushing around." She wasn't expecting much, but within an hour, the comments started pouring in. People from the neighborhood, from other states, and even strangers who have never set foot in that bakery. It was as if that moving letter had found a collective echo. Between cake recipes and Sunday selfies, there was a story of overcoming, of humility that wins, of real-life poetry. "Who is this gentleman?" they asked. "I want to hug you. I remembered my grandfather. I cried at the bus stop reading this." What was once commonplace became a source of commotion, and the name Sir Dimas became a symbol of wisdom for the elderly. That week, the bakery took on a different tone. More than just coffee and warm bread, it now serves moving stories. People went there just to ask about the touching man with the beautiful handwriting. Some brought flowers, others asked to read more letters. And the neighborhood, previously hurried, began to move a little more slowly, as if listening to the soul. The bakery owner, touched by all the repercussions, had a simple but powerful idea. He asked Mr. Dimas for permission to print some of the letters he had written. He, with his quiet humility, just smiled and said, "If this helps anyone, go ahead and use it." And so, on the side wall of the hall, the mural of love was born. There, between paintings and promotions, words emerged that healed silent wounds. Each week, a new letter was placed on the board. People came, read, took pictures, and cried. It was impossible not to be moved by the heartfelt writing of that moving gentleman. It wasn't high literature, but it was pure truth. And that's why it struck so deeply. The mural became a meeting point for those who needed comfort or just a break from the outside world. The very dynamics of the bakery have changed. Customers started to smile more and greet each other. The line was no longer just waiting. It was an opportunity to reflect, to feel. That mural, born from a letter to his deceased wife, became a daily altar of empathy and humanity. And at the center of it all, the discreet figure of Demas gradually became a living legacy. Days later, the bakery door opened with a timid creak. It was him, the arrogant client, but different. No suit, no rush, with a heavy expression. He looked around as if looking for something that wasn't on the shelves, until he saw him, sitting at the table in the corner with the same blue-covered notebook. Mr. Dimas wrote, as always, without fanfare, like someone breathing in peace. The man approached slowly, almost asking permission with his eyes. He stopped before the moving man, took off his cap, and simply said, "I was rude, forgive me." Silence reigned for a few seconds, but instead of resentment, there came a slight smile. "I already forgave you that day, son," replied Mr. Dimas, without putting down his pen. The phrase was a moving gesture, greater than any sermon. There was the wisdom of the third age, teaching once again that forgiveness is a gift that is given before it is even asked for. The excitement in the bakery took over again, and in that moment, more than apologizing, that man learned what it truly means to repent and what it means to be touched by a story of overcoming. The next morning, as usual, Mr. Dimas arrived early. He sat on the same bench, opened his notebook, and wrote as calmly as ever. But that letter in particular felt different. It was short, direct, but filled with a new feeling. When the clerk read it, her eyes filled with tears before she even reached the end. "Today I was told that I taught someone something. Maybe there is still time to plant sweetness in the world." These words were prominently displayed on the wall. Some said it was his best letter. Others said it was his most beautiful farewell. At the base of the mural, in delicate letters, was the signature that everyone now knew: Dimas, the old man who wrote love. That moving gentleman became a symbol of empathy, humility, and respect. His heartfelt writing left its mark on every person who stopped to listen, even if only for a few minutes. And even if time continues to pass, your words will remain there, eternal, like all poetry in real life. And you, have you ever stopped to think about how many stories are hidden in the people who go unnoticed around you? How many times have you judged someone by the time they take, their appearance, or even by a simple silence? Dimas' story is more than moving. It is an invitation to empathy, to pause, to listen, because sometimes the greatest life lesson isn't in books, but in the bakery line. How about practicing this today? Look into someone's eyes, listen without rushing, forgive without being asked. Humility that wins, true love, the poetry of everyday life. All of this is within our reach. You can also write from your heart. It doesn't have to be on paper, just with gestures, because every transformation through love begins with a simple act of humanity. If this moving narrative touched you in any way, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, with each story, we plant a new seed of tenderness in the world. And who knows, maybe the next letter that changes lives won't come from you.